In this week's Parsha, we're going to read a double Parsha, Acharei Mot-Kedoshim. And in Parshas Kedoshim, the Torah gives us the very famous commandment of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow as yourself. We have the famous quote of Rabbi Akiva that you all are familiar with because it's one of those famous songs. But it's based on the Gemara in the Jerusalem Talmud, or the Palestinian Talmud, from Tractate Nedarim. It's in source number 1, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Zehu klal gadol b'Torah. He says this is a large category, or a large rule of the Torah, or it is the large rule of the Torah, or it is the great rule of the Torah. Now what that means needs to be defined more carefully. But less popularly sung is Ben Azai's rejoinder to Rabbi Akiva, which is Ben Azai Omer, Zeh Sefer Toldos Adam, Zeh Klal Gadol Mizeh. Ben Azai says, I disagree with you, Rabbi Akiva. It may be true that V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha is a very important rule of the Torah, but there's an even more important rule of the Torah, which is this is the scroll of the Chronicles of Man. What is Ben Azai? What pasuk is Ben Azai referring to? It's a pasuk in Sefer Bereshis, Parshas Bereshis, source number 2. After the story of Cain and Hevel, the Torah tells us, Zeh Sefer Toldos Adam. This is the story or the chronicle of the generations of man. Biyom bero Elokim Adam, on the day that God created man, Vidmus Elokim asa osa. He created him in the image of God. So Ben Azai says this pasuk represents an even greater principle than the principle of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. That God, this is the book of the Chronicles of mankind, that God created man in his image. There are a number of questions that we can ask on Ben Azai. Rabbi Akiva, well, of course, Rabbi Akiva reminds us of that famous story with the prospective convert who comes to Hillel and says, teach me the whole Torah while I'm standing on one foot. And what does Hillel say to the man? What is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That's the entire Torah. The rest is commentary. Now go study it. Now, why is it? Why does that represent the great principle of the Torah? Because ultimately, if a person is driven by that guiding principle, that whatever you wouldn't want to be done to yourself, don't do to your fellow, you would ultimately only do good in the world and do no harm. And that would be true both when it comes to God and when it comes to man, because if you're sensitive to the feelings of others by projecting your own feelings to that other party, you would do the same thing for the Ribono Shel Olam. Hashem is a parent, just like any other human parent, and we won't want to hurt our parents, we don't want to hurt Hashem's feelings either. And so therefore we would always feel compelled to be obedient to the Ribono Shel Olam as well as trying to be sensitive to the needs of our fellow human being. So that explains Rabbi Akiva, but Ben Azai really defies understanding at face value. This is the chronicle of the story of mankind. First of all, this is not the first time in the Torah where it says that God created man in his image. Earlier in the Torah, in chapter 2 of Genesis, it says, Vayikr Hashem Elokim es ha'adam, that God created man, and God created man, Naseh Adam b'tzalmeinu, let us make man in our image. Hashem had said, I'm going to make man in my image. Why do we wait until this pasuk to discuss that idea? Another question is that what is the principle that we're supposed to derive that every human being was made in God's image? What is the principle that we're supposed to get out of that? It's not even a mitzvah. So how can you call it a klal gadol? Let's take a look at the Malbim and see how he understands. We're just taking a small portion of the Malbim. It's a much larger essay, but let's see what he says. He says, "Uchvar be'aru hafilosofim shahachok harashi shuhu shoresh lechochmat hamidot." Philosophers have already told us that if you want to be able to get to the root of all wisdom and all of the wisdom of proper conduct, a human temperament, that a person should strive for one guiding principle that guides everything that he does in his life. Philosophers tell us that's the healthiest way to live. If you have one set rule by which you can say that this is the general guiding principle of my life, then you'll have a good life. And therefore, what Rabbi Akiva is teaching is that if you want to be able to acquire benefit through your friend's detriment, you should think to yourself, is this what I want to be my guiding principle? That I want to benefit even at others' expenses? If that's the case, then you'll be living in a society where everyone will be operating under that guiding principle, so that everyone will be exploiting other people in order to be able to advance themselves personally. He says, certainly that's not going to work for you if another person is going to incur a loss for that own person's benefit. He says, if you realize that that's not going to work for society as a guiding principle, then you're not going to end up adopting that as your guiding principle in life. And therefore, similarly, if you have the ability to help someone else and you desist from helping them, ask yourself, is my behavior something that I would like to live by as my guiding principle? In other words, does this fit in? My failure to help someone else, does that fit in with my guiding principle? Because if that's true, then other people that'll be the guiding principle for society, and other people will not help me when I need them. In other words, whatever guiding principle you feel is the right way to live, you have to apply it to all of society and all of mankind and see if it works. If it works universally, then you should adopt it. If it doesn't work universally, you should not adopt it. That's what Rabbi Akiva means. He says, if you're looking for one guiding principle that is universal and can be applied to every single person within society, if everyone would adopt this, the world would be a better place. It would be love your neighbor as yourself. He says some philosophers who are more circumspect look at this rule that Rabbi Akiva has adopted and they challenge it. They said this is insufficient. He says because at the end of the day, what is a person's motivation for helping others? I'm helping others because I wouldn't want others to not help me, so I'll help others so that others will help me. In other words, there is a certain selfishness to Rabbi Akiva's maxim. Love others like you love yourself. If you wouldn't want others to treat you in a bad way, don't treat others in a bad way as well. Treat others in a good way, so you'll be treated in a good way too. If that's the case, but a philosopher should strive for something higher than that. A philosopher should strive for doing that which is the greater good without seeing what personal gain one may derive from that action. And it is for that reason that He'ela ben Azai et haklal li'inyan niskav yoter. That Ben Azai feels that there is an even loftier ideal to strive for. Shesamach al zeh sefer toldot adam, shekol bnei adam kishurim keguf echad. And that's what Ben Azai's statement is. Ben Azai is essentially saying, this is the book of the Chronicles of Man. Every single human being is connected. Every single human being is joined together because we are all part of the family of man. V'kulam nivru b'tzelem Elokim, and we were all created in the image of God. Lahashlim hatzelem udumut ha'elyon shekolel kol nafshot b'nei adam kulam. And we were all created to, in some way, make that image of God complete. And that image of God is inclusive of every single human being in the world. Shekulam ki ish echad u'chu guf echad hamorkav me'evarim shonim. We are all, after all, like just limbs of the same body. We are all just disparate limbs of the same body. And as such, it behooves us to be concerned about the welfare of the rest of humanity. Just like I'm concerned if I stub my toe, I'm not going to say, well, I don't have to worry, it's only my toe. No, if I stub my toe, it affects the rest of me because I feel that I'm all connected. I'm connected to that toe. So too, if there's one component of humanity which is suffering, if there's thousands and thousands of people in Kathmandu who are suffering now because of a terrible, terrible natural disaster, then I should have to feel that. That should actually course through my very essence and be a source of pain. And I should only be able to alleviate that pain by being reactive in some way, by participating in some way to the plight of the people who are in Nepal and helping them in whatever way that I can. Baruch Hashem, which is what the state of Israel does today. Shaharosh yehavet hayad kemo et atzmo. After all, the head loves its hand just as much as it loves itself. So this is a beautiful thought. Ben Azai makes a lot of sense now. Ben Azai is telling us that Rabbi Akiva's maxim is a selfish maxim. Love others like you love yourself. So I have to think about myself, and that's my motivation for loving other people. That, I have to realize that, if I don't love other people, they're going to live by that same, dog-eat-dog kind of principle that I live by, and no one's going to be happy. So therefore, if I want to be happy, I better love other people like I love myself. And Ben Azai says that's not the greater good. The greater good is to realize that we're all connected and we're all created in the image of God, and that should be the motivation, is that we're all part of the same body, we're all together in this. United we stand, divided we fall. Now, the question then becomes, it's a kasha on Rabbi Akiva. Are you telling me that the great Rabbi Akiva didn't realize this? How do we defend Rabbi Akiva? Ben Azai is one of Rabbi Akiva's contemporaries. You know this, yes? And Ben Azai is a person who did not achieve the same level of achievement. We want to talk about personal achievement. Rabbi Akiva's achievements for the Jewish people were far greater than Ben Azai's. As a matter of fact, you know how Ben Azai lost his life? Very different experience than from Rabbi Akiva. In source number 6, Tana Rabbanan, our sages teach us, this is from the Talmud Chagiga, Arba'a nichnasu bepardes. There were 4 great sages of a particular generation who entered into the orchard. And of course, this refers to either deep philosophical or mystical speculation. But they entered into an otherworldly realm, which is very dangerous because they were going to have a very deep encounter with the divine. And you had to be properly prepared in order to be able to survive the ordeal properly. The Talmud tells us that out of the 4 people who entered into this orchard of divinity, Rabbi Akiva was the only one who came out without any damage whatsoever. Ben Zoma, what happened to him? Well, Ben Zoma, he went insane. Rabbi Elisha ben Abuya was another one. He became a heretic. But the 2 people that we're going to learn about are Ben Azai and Rabbi Akiva. Ben Azai heitzitz vames. Ben Azai gazed too far, and he died. And Alav HaKasav Omer, Yakar B'nei Hashem Hamasal Chasidav. And that's the pasuk about Ben Azai. It says that God is very precious in Hashem's eyes are those among his pious who die. So Ben Azai died, but he died a virtuous death. But nevertheless, he died. And then the Talmud tells us for Rabbi Akiva, what happened to Rabbi Akiva? He went in peace, and Yatsa B'Shalom, he left in peace. He was the only one who was capable of having a very, very dramatic and overpowering encounter with the divine, and was able to emerge unscathed, unharmed, unaffected, and was elevated in the process. So you're going to tell me that Rabbi Akiva didn't get what Ben Azai got? How's that possible? How is that possible that Rabbi Akiva has an inferior klal gadol to Ben Azai's klal gadol? And so the Balbim doesn't answer that question. We need to answer that question. We need to defend the Rabbi Akiva. So I want us to take a look at the difference between Ben Azai and Rabbi Akiva. And I think it's a very important lesson. Ben Azai is known as the Chassid of the Jewish people during his generation. What is a Chassid? A Chassid, by definition, is a pious person who is prepared to self-sacrifice. If I know that there's a greater good that can be attained even at my own personal sacrifice, I'm prepared to do that. And we know that that's at least one of the explanations of why Ben Azai hates Yitzvah Meis. Ben Azai was extremely detached from his physical existence. He wasn't really grounded in the physical world. Did you know that Ben Azai never married? Ben Azai never married. They wanted to make a shidduch between Ben Azai and Rabbi Akiva's daughter. And the shidduch was read, and the plan was he was going to marry Rabbi Akiva's daughter. But he couldn't go through with it, because he said, Nafshi chashka b'Torah. He says, I'm too attached to Torah study. I can't. My whole physical existence means nothing to me. I am so attached to the divine that I am prepared to sacrifice all physical desires, all physical aspirations, and all I want is the Torah. And if we look at, and that would certainly explain why Ben Azai hates Yitzvah Meis, because Rabbi Akiva understands that any encounter with the divine requires of the individual, if he's going to continue living in this world, requires the individual to temper his encounter with the divine with keeping his feet firmly planted in this world. You can't be an extreme spiritualist if you want to be still a part of this world. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva knows not to gaze too far into the divine. Ben Azai says, I don't care what happens to me. If I have an opportunity to conjoin with the Almighty in the most intimate of ways, in the highest of ways, and it means sacrificing my life, it's worth it. And he just jumps in head first into this orchard without any care about his own person. So it's not surprising that Ben Azai hates Yitzvah Meis. It's the same Ben Azai who has no care for his physical well-being in this world, which is why he never gets married, and only wants to cleave unto the Torah. And when you think about it in this light, you take a look at some of Ben Azai's teachings, and we'll focus specifically in source number 5 in the teaching of Ben Azai in the 4th chapter, 3rd mission of Pirkei Avos. It's in source number 5, the 3rd line. Hu haya omer. Ben Azai used to say, Al tihi baz l'chol adam, v'al tihi maflig l'chol davar. Ben Azai says, never deprecate any human being, and never put down anything in life. She'en lecha adam she'en lo sha'a, ve'en lecha davar she'en lo makom. Because, as we say in the vernacular, every dog has his day. And Azai was of the opinion that there's something special within everything and everyone in this world. Now, you can certainly see how Ben Azai has a certain unique kind of vision about this world that most other people don't have. We live in a world where we create separations, where we create divisions, and we're able to categorize. Ben Azai sees everything as part of the divine. And he therefore says that ultimately every human being has its Tzelem Elokim. Every human being is created in the image of God. Everything is holy in this world. And our ultimate aspiration must be to cleave unto God as closely as possible. But because every single human being is part of that collective, you cannot put down any individual human being. And therefore, for Ben Azai, there is no difference between one Tzelem Elokim and another Tzelem Elokim. There is no difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. There's no difference between a person from my nation and a person from another nation. He has this extremely global worldview of everything is beautiful and everything is holy because everything is God. And that's an amazing worldview. But that and $3 will get you a cup of coffee. In other words, the fact is you can't survive in a world that way. You can't make it. You're not going to be able to make it and be viable in a world without the ability to make distinctions without being mavdul ben kodesh l'chol, without making distinctions between the holy and the mundane, between darkness and light, between good and evil that exist in the world. So despite the fact that everyone is created in the image of God, you need a certain sensibility of Rabbi Akiva to be able to say, I see the divine right in front of me, but hold on, I'm still part of this world. Let me pull back. You need the sensibility of a Rabbi Akiva to tell you that every human being is a composite of good and evil, of the physical and the spiritual, of the knowledge of what's right and what's wrong, of a Yetzer HaTov and a Yetzer Hara. And the Torah recognizes that as well. And the Torah, therefore, because God created us, He understands what our makeup is, He appeals as much to our Yetzer Hara as much as He does appeal to our Yetzer HaTov. And therefore, without a certain selfish motivation within the things that we do in life, we will be totally unanchored and untethered. And not only that, but Rabbi Akiva is prepared to say that as beautiful as the world is, and as amazing as everyone is at Tzelem Elokim, when that guy comes at you with a rock and is about to throw it at you, you have to be prepared to defend yourself and to be able to know who is your friend and who is your enemy. I mean, if I had the world view, if Ben Azai was going up against a Nazi or an anti-Semite or someone ready to, an angry Palestinian mob or whatever it was, and they were about to throw rocks at him, Ben Azai would say, my brethren, you're created in the image of God, I love you all. And then they would,
He was the original flower child.
He was his groovy baby, but and so that would be the end of Ben Azai. Ben Azai Heitzitz Vameis means that he sees the divinity in everything and everyone, and he's incapable of making those distinctions in life. And I think that's an important idea for us to remember, is that the Torah appeals to the Yetzer Hara as much as it appeals to the Yetzer HaTov. Ben Azai's rule is a greater rule, is a greater overarching principle, even than Rabbi Akiva's, because it appeals to only the divinity and beauty that exists within the world. But it's not practical. And that's why Rabbi Akiva disagrees with it, not because he doesn't acknowledge the truth in it, but because it cannot be executed by the vast majority of the human beings for whom the Torah was given. Yes, please.
I was just wondering, I feel silly to ask this, but if we're created in the image of Hashem, but Hashem doesn't have Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, so why did we put that on us? And we're supposed to be the exact same image.
That's a very good question. It's one of the mysteries that we ultimately will not be able to completely answer. But the one thing that the Yetzer Hara does provide us with is a certain godly feature that for Hashem was the most important, and that was Bechira Chofshit, free will. We would not have free will if we did not have a Yetzer Hara. So God essentially says, the one feature of divinity that is most important for you to have is the freedom to choose what you will do next. That is something that I, God, have, and that is something that I wish to bestow upon you. The only way that you can have that is if you have a Yetzer Hara, otherwise you would not have free will. So that's the reason why Hashem created this way. And that is the part of the image of God in which He created us. That's the 30-second answer. Yes?
I just wanted to, so, I mean, I understand that you're saying in practicality this is the way life is, but shouldn't that still be what we aspire to? Like, if you just take the attitude, you just have, there's evil, and you have to just separate between good and evil, and you have to, do what's practical in life. You have to do that now, but shouldn't we still, in the back of our minds, or in the hope for the future, aspire
Absolutely.
To that level?
Not only should we aspire to it, but we have to hold on to Ben Azai's teaching, because when Mashiach comes, and the world will have the Yetzer Hara purged, those divisions will no longer need to be made. We will not need Rabbi Akiva's teaching anymore, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, and we'll only have Ben Azai's teaching.
Or not before that?
Well, yes, before that too. You see, that's the point that I made. If a person doesn't cry over what happened in Nepal, whether figuratively or literally, then there's something wrong with them. There's something wrong with a person who is reckless and just totally cold and emotionless to a 7.8 earthquake that kills 4,000 people. If you don't react to it in some way, if you don't feel a sense of pain just about the human condition of people, even if Israelis never went to Kathmandu, right? But just the fact that human beings who are created in the image of Hashem were wiped out like that in such a painful way, and there's still people that are buried under the rubble, and you don't feel that, so then you're not in touch with your Tzelem Elokim, because you don't feel that. You don't feel that a portion of your body has been severed in some way. You have to feel it. But there are going to be times in life when there's going to be a conflict between Rabbi Akiva's teaching and Ben Azai's teaching. And that's why we paskin like Rabbi Akiva. During those times when you need to go to war, you can't look at the enemy and say, what a beautiful Tzelem Elokim you are. I can't bring myself to shoot you. You can't. That's when we have to paskin like Rabbi Akiva. Okay, have a great day, everybody.